So you believe Blake Lively wrestled control of the film?
I think she tried to, yes.
Did she succeed in the end?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So, look, Blake Lively is concerned about the deposition statements that Justin Baldoni and his lawyers are preparing to file in the court. And one of the most crucial people on the list is going to be this crew member.
That there was a massive compromise in terms of Justin's original vision for the film.
Haley Spencer was a storyboard artist on the It Ends With You. She wasn't some random person who arrived in for a day. She was there every single day working beside Blake, observing the whole situation unfold from the very beginning to the very end. She saw the production collapse in real time, and she has no reason to fabricate about what she witnessed. That's what makes her so important for Blake Lively's case. Spencer isn't coming in with an agenda. She's not trying to sell a book or get famous. She's just a person who was there, who saw what happened, and who's about to tell a jury exactly what she saw.
I think in film, everybody's always vying for power and control. I think that this is probably the most intense situation I've ever been in film.
Now, what is Spencer expected to testify about? Well, she was in the room when all the decisions were being taken. She observed how Blake interacted with Justin Baldoni on a daily basis. And according to all information coming out so far, her experience with Justin Baldoni is the complete opposite of what Blake Lively's teams has been asserting.
In my opinion, I find it very hard to believe the allegations against him. And considering his mission statement about the film and him genuinely pitching that he was doing this film to help young women, I just find it hard to believe the allegations, to be honest.
What I believe Talia Spencer is prepared to state is a core truth that Justin was decent and truly wanted to make a movie that could actually help audiences. He wasn't trying to create a toxic environment. He was trying to do serious work. But here is the key point Spencer will also address, and it is something I feel needs clearly, which is how Blake viewed at that kindness.
Blake smelled his kindness, mistook it for weakness, and tried to take advantage and take power, so.
Talia knows that Blake Lively strategically leveraged Baldoni's gentleness as a weakness to gain. I want you to consider what that moment means to the jury. They're going to hear from someone who was there every day, who has no clear reason to pick sides, and who watched the whole thing play out in real time. That's not a hired expert. That's a real person with real observation. And her observations directly challenge the entire account Blake Lively has been pushing with her lawyer. And Spencer isn't even the only insider witness who I believe could completely disrupt this trial. Adam Shine is another former crew member, and his testimony is looking equally important, maybe even more so in some ways.
On to Blake Lively's claims that she was nearly nude, he alleges her costume included a full hospital gown, black shorts, and torso-covering prosthetic to make her appear pregnant in addition to whatever personal garments she.
The reason Adam's declaration is so important is that although Spencer's testimony is about observations, what she saw happen, how people behaved, and the atmosphere on set, Adam is going to discuss something entirely different. He is going to testify that Blake Lively intentionally lied in federal legal documents. Specifically, he says she fabricated claims about being forced into to create a perception of this simply did not exist. Hold page 6.
Page 6. I'm not going to speculate as to Miss Lively's motivations for mentioning me in the complaint. Needless to say, my experience working with her is very different than the one she described in her lawsuit.
Let that sink in first. This isn't about conflicting interpretations of events. This is about whether Blake Lively made false statements directly to the court. When someone lies in a legal filing, that's not just a credibility problem, that's a potential wrongful act. That is exactly the kind of thing that can fully unfold a legal strategy because it shows the court that the person making the claims can't be trusted. And here is the most underappreciated thing that Adam's testimony revealed. When I look at everything that's come out, the emails, the text messages, and the way Blake and Ryan Reynolds operated throughout this whole ordeal, a clear strategy emerges from the dust. Adam essentially describes this as a high-level elite star inventing a fabricated story to execute a business strategy. In other words, this was never about actual abuse happening. This was about using the language of victimhood to gain benefit in a business, and if a jury believes that's what happened, it changes everything about how they view every single claim Blake Lively has. The judge already dismissed her main allegations based on the evidence. I believe Adam's testimony could be the final piece that shows the jury exactly what was really going on behind.
Mountains of evidence that she has, to me, so far, only shows the lengths that her and Ryan were willing to go to completely destroy Wayfair and take over their movie.
The court has been delivering some significant rulings, and they haven't been going Blake's direction at all. Initially of all, the judge rejected her request to keep certain documents sealed. This indicates more of this material is going to become public. I'm not mentioning to a few emails here and there. The judge has basically ruled that pending pretrial motions are going to be unsealed.
If you thought that was enough drama, check this out. TV and Movie Addict is reporting that more will be unsealed. The judge said he will unseal a lot of...
The court has been issuing some major rulings, and they haven't been going Blake's direction at all. First, the judge rejected her request to keep certain documents sealed, meaning more of this material will become public. This isn't just a few emails. The judge has essentially said that pending pretrial motions will be unsealed. That's a big deal because we've already seen how messy those unsealed documents have been. The ones that came out earlier exposed Ryan Reynolds' behavior, showed how the whole situation was being run, and gave a window into how Blake and her team were operating behind the scenes. Now, imagine what happens when even more documents get released right before or during the trial. That's a lot of pressure on a legal team that's already struggling. It gets worse because the judge granted a motion for attorney fees to the defendant. That means her side might have to pay some of Baldoni's legal costs. In a case this big, with lawyers charging what they charge, those attorney fees could be enormous. It's essentially the court saying that her claims were weak enough that the other side deserves compensation for defending against them. When you combine these rulings, you can see why her team's position is getting more difficult by the day. There's also something important regarding the claims of deception in this case. Justin's lawyers have been digging into Blake Lively's filings and pointing to serious inconsistencies. Specifically, they're accusing her of providing misleading information about her role in production job losses, including the firing of a first assistant director. Think about what that means. The first assistant director on a film is a critical position, responsible for keeping the production running day to day. If one was fired during It Ends With You, that's significant. And if Blake Lively was involved in that decision but then claimed she had nothing to do with it in her legal filing, that's a problem. That's not just a difference of opinion about what happened. It's possibly one side misleading the court about involvement. When you look at everything that's come out, it's getting harder for Ryan's wife. What's also interesting is how public opinion has shifted throughout this. When she first filed her claim, her supporters rallied quickly. She's a famous actress with many fans, and the initial story framed her as someone mistreated by a director on her film. That's an easy narrative to support without full information, but as more evidence has come out, public support has started to shift, and a big part of that is because Justin Baldoni has remained consistent. His story hasn't changed, his approach has stayed the same, and new information seems to support his version rather than undermine it. That's a difficult position to overcome when trying to convince the public you're the victim, according to the ongoing reporting coverage.
Blake's trial could drag on for a month, warned the judge who will preside over the case. Judge Louis Lehman told jurors that the case between the co-stars of the movie It Ends With Us could be in court for 3 to 4 weeks after its May 18th.
The judge has also directed the jury to prepare for what could be a 3 to 4 week trial set for May 18th. When a trial is expected to last that long, it usually means both sides have extensive material to present, including multiple witnesses, substantial evidence, and complex legal arguments. This will be a lengthy process for everyone involved, requiring significant time in court. The stakes are clearly high, given the financial amounts involved and the reputational impact on both sides.
The judge revealed that potential jurors will be asked if they would have a problem giving Lively $0 in damages.
Now, here's something that's genuinely interesting from a legal strategy perspective. Blake Lively's legal team has been attempting to draw comparisons between her situation and the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation case. If you remember that trial, Depp argued that Amber Heard defamed him through public statements, and he ultimately persuaded a jury that her claims were false. Blake Lively's team is making a somewhat similar argument, suggesting she was subjected to an online digital smear campaign. They are trying to frame what happened to her in similar terms to the Depp case, implying that the public perception of her was shaped by a coordinated effort to damage her reputation rather than reflecting the full reality of the situation.
Suggests the actress plans to invoke the widely reported defamation battle between Depp v. Heard as part of her strategy against Justin Baldoni. Blake argues she faced a similar online pile-on fueled by reputational.
It's a notable strategy, and you can see why her attorneys would attempt it. The Depp case was a major Hollywood trial, and many people came away from it believing Depp had been wrongly accused and that Amber Heard had fabricated those allegations to gain leverage in their situation. If Blake Lively's team can get the jury to view her circumstances in a similar light, it could help reshape how they interpret her claims and her conduct throughout this entire matter. Whether that approach ultimately succeeds is another question entirely. The details of these cases are not the same, and the jury will be focused on the specific evidence and testimony presented rather than trying to align it with the structure of a previous high-profile trial. Still, it's clearly a strategic move from her legal team and shows they are actively working to position her in the most favorable framing possible. On the opposing side, Justin Baldoni's legal team has remained very firm in their stance and has consistently held to their position throughout.
Be out there. We want the documents to be out there. We want people to make their determination based on receipt.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for May 18th? A lot of things have shifted. First, the claims still moving forward are basically what's left at this point. We're talking about more technical issues, mainly directed at the corporate entity Wayfair Studios, not the individuals themselves. The material that once formed the emotional center of the case, the core of the allegations, is no longer in play. That alone changes the entire shape of the trial. Blake is no longer entering the courtroom as a victim pursuing justice in the same way. A federal judge has already ruled that the broader abuse narrative, as originally presented, does not proceed in that form. Instead, she is now positioned in a very different role, facing a $400 million counterclaim. That is a fundamentally different legal posture. When you are the plaintiff, you are shaping the story. You control how the narrative is introduced and framed. When you are the defendant, that control disappears. You are responding, not leading. Your actions are examined under scrutiny rather than presented as the foundation of the case. Blake will likely face cross-examination about what occurred during the film's production. That includes emails, text messages, and interactions with crew members. Without the structure of the dismissed claims, there is no central narrative she can lean on in the same way she could before. The court has already narrowed what story can be carried forward, which changes how everything will be argued in front of a jury. This also means witnesses like Talia Spencer and Adam Shine become far more central, as the jury will be hearing firsthand accounts of what people say they observed on set. If you step back, this also reflects a broader strategy that likely formed early on. Blake and Ryan Reynolds were operating with significant influence, major Hollywood status, industry connections, and strong PR capability, including links to high-profile figures. The assumption may have been that this would create enough pressure to force Justin Baldoni into a settlement or a quiet resolution that end many Hollywood disputes. That kind of pressure often leads to compromise because public perception and reputational risk matter so much. But Baldoni responded differently. Rather than stepping back, he escalated with a $400 million counterclaim and pushed for extensive discovery, including unsealing communications and internal documents. That decision changed the direction of the case entirely and set it on a much more public and transparent trajectory going forward.
Actor-director Justin Baldoni is now suing his former co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds, seeking more than $400 million in damages, accusing them of defamation and extortion.
When everything is forced into the light, the people who built their strategy around narrative control suddenly have very little room left. And the unsealed documents that followed didn't exactly help Blake Lively's side. Ryan Reynolds was revealed in messages where he addressed production figures and referred to executives in harsh terms like ineffectual elderly. That doesn't really resemble someone simply defending his wife's reputation. It reflects someone applying pressure within the production environment. Then there was Taylor Swift. She and Blake were close, but once Swift realized she could potentially be drawn into the legal discovery process, she chose to distance herself from the situation. The PR team hired by Blake to manage the narrative also became part of the fallout, with internal disagreements and legal tension over strategy and documentation, turning what was meant to be controlled messaging into a more complicated internal conflict. Piece by piece, the broader strategy started to unravel. Baldoni didn't step back. Instead, the push toward transparency ended up working against the attempt to keep things contained. The relationships and influence that were expected to provide support instead became points of pressure. Now, with the trial approaching, the core claims have been narrowed. Witnesses are preparing to testify about what they observed, and a significant counterclaim remains active. At the same time, Justin Baldoni's approach drew attention in a different way. When the initial legal conflict gained public attention in late 2024, commentary and debate spread widely across media and social platforms. Through that period, Baldoni remained largely silent, staying off social media and avoiding public statements or commentary. That silence continued until May 12th of the following year, around Mother's Day, when he posted a simple family photo featuring his mother, his wife, and their children. There was no reference to the case or any dispute. The caption focused entirely on family and gratitude, describing love, faith, and appreciation for mothers. The response in the comments was largely supportive, with many viewing it as a grounded moment amid a highly publicized situation. It stood in contrast to the more active public messaging surrounding the case. This difference in approach became part of the broader discussion around the dispute. While Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' side appeared more focused on shaping public narrative through communication and strategy, Baldoni's approach remained minimal and restrained, and that contrast itself became a talking point in how the situation was being perceived publicly. Legal filings, intense PR campaigns, and high-profile celebrity alignments created a sense of chaos designed to put pressure on the opposing side. But then there was a quieter contrast. A simple Mother's Day post featuring a family photo with no controversy attached. When those two images are placed side by side, the noise of legal conflict, media narratives, and influence on one hand, and a restrained focus on family and faith on the other, the contrast becomes striking. This is part of why Talia Spencer's expected testimony carries weight in this discussion. She is anticipated to describe Justin as kind, respectful, and focused on his work. From her perspective, she observed someone who genuinely aimed to create meaningful work and maintain a professional environment. That description aligns with the more restrained public presence he maintained during the legal dispute, where he largely stayed out of public commentary. Meanwhile, Blake Lively's side has attempted to present a very different interpretation of events. But supporters of Baldoni point to unsealed documents, witness accounts, and his overall conduct as supporting a different picture. In that view, Spencer's testimony would help reinforce the gap between competing narratives and provide first-hand context about what was observed on set. Attention has also turned to earlier court developments in the case. The judge reviewed extensive filings, including documents, text messages, and deposition materials. In that process, a number of claims were dismissed, significantly narrowing the scope of what remains in dispute. From a legal standpoint, this reshaping of the case means that several of the original claims are no longer moving forward as initially presented, and the remaining issues are more limited in scope and focus on specific legal questions rather than the broader narrative originally described in public discussions.
13 claims are not making it to trial. All of the claims that she made about harassment, really, it's just retaliation.
As we count down to May 18th, 2026, here's what we know so far. Blake Lively's legal team appears to be facing growing challenges as their strategy has been tested step by step, while witnesses who are present during key events are preparing to testify in court. At that point, public interpretation and PR narratives will matter far less than direct courtroom testimony. The trial is increasingly being viewed as a moment where competing claims will be examined in full detail under oath. Based on available reporting, the situation looks more complex for the side that may have expected influence and celebrity status to shape the outcome. Ultimately, the jury will decide based on evidence and testimony presented in court, not outside commentary. With May 18th approaching, attention remains focused on how the proceedings will unfold and what new information may emerge as the case develops.